utility of the required field validation control, which requires that in this particular case something is filled out in the name text box before the form will be allowed to submit back to the web server. Very cool and very easy to do. Let's take this one step further. I'm actually going to move this status label down a little bit. And the next control that I want to use is a compare validator. Very similar to the required field, but instead of checking to make sure that the text property is not empty, in this case we'll make sure that it's not equal to some value. I want to make sure that the user makes a selection in the status dropdown so that select one and then an ellipsis is not submitted back to the web server. We'll stop the submission of that form before it makes it back to the web server if they have refused to select a status from this drop-down list box. So let's go ahead and set some properties of this control. First of all, we want to set the control to validate as the status drop-down. Here we have some options we're going to have to think through a little bit. First of all, we want the type to be set to string, and we want the value to compare select one ... and we need to change the operator so that it's not equal to select one. So now that we've set these properties, let's go ahead and run our application again. I'll type in some data there, and then I'm just going to leave select one. And notice that whenever I click the OK button, compare validator, I forgot to change the error message property, but you can see that it actually kicked into gear, and by selecting not started, it goes away. Okay? Here's another neat feature as well. Notice that both are now lit up. Both validator controls are lit up because both conditions are found to be in violation of the validation rules that I've set up. And so you don't have to nickel and dime your end user by saying you forgot the name, let them fill out the name, click OK, and then say, oh, well, now you forgot the status, and so forth. You can show them everything that's wrong all at one time. Okay, very cool. Let me go ahead and change some of the properties here. We will change the error message on both of these, and we will change the text to be name is required, and we'll change the text here to be status is, whoops, I think I got this backwards actually. Let's do this. Status is required. Okay, there we go. Name is required. And now we're going to use a third validation control. Great. And that validation control is called the validation summary. And so it will list everything in one big list at the bottom of our web page, or at the top, wherever we prefer to put it, so that the user need to only look in one place to get a full explanation of everything that's wrong before trying to resubmit the web page. Now, I have not set any properties for this validation summary control, but by virtue of the fact that it exists on our web form, it's now ready to be used. So I'm going to run my application. I'm not going to fill in name or status, but I am going to click the OK button, and notice that it does put the red asterisks next to name and status, but at the very bottom it gives us the full explanation of the problem. Name is required, status is required, and I can make this as friendly as an error message as I want to. I can even add maybe an opening line that says, please fix the following problems before submitting the form. Very neat. Okay, so let's move on from there. Okay, so we're nearing the end, but I wanted to show you some neat functionality that's contained within the layout toolbar. So we already talked about the purpose for the layout toolbar in the previous video, I believe, or the beginning of this video, and that is to help us determine where we want to, or how we line up the items on our form. So you can see that the left-hand side of the name, status, and department labels are slightly out of a line. Looks like status might be pushed out just a little bit more than name and department. So what I can do is select all the controls, and notice that the name control has white carets around its selection. The others have black or grayed out carets around their selection, which means that whenever we use the layout toolbar, that it's going to use the current settings of the name, because it's the white carets, it's the last selected one, as the settings for, in this case, the left-hand side. So now we're going to click this Align Lefts, and if you saw, it was just a really small adjustment that status and department made. They were moved over to the right just a little bit. Okay. Now the same can be true whenever I select name and the text box. I may want to align their tops or align their middles. That's probably a better way to go about it. So it calculates what the middle XY position is of name, and then it sets that Y position for our text box as well. Now we can use other controls to decrease the horizontal spacing or increase horizontal spacing, or to remove any horizontal spacing, as I did accidentally. Okay? Or I have the freedom to select it and use the arrow key on my keyboard to move things around to the right or to the left, up or down. Okay. Now in this particular case, maybe what I want to do is move these a little bit closer together, and I'll stagger these off. First thing I want to do is make the vertical spacing equal, so whatever the spacing is between name and status will be the same spacing between status and department. So here we'll select this button, make it equal, so it moves status up just a little bit. Then we'll want to select all three controls, and we're going to align their lefts. And then I'm going to select the controls here and align their middles. Do the same here. Whoops. And align their middles. Okay. And we'll do the same here and align their middles. Whoops, kind of made a mistake there. So what can I do? I can go back by selecting Edit, Undo Align Middle. Okay. The reason is because I had the wrong item selected, so I want to make sure Department is selected, and I'm going to click Align Middles again, moving everything up. Great. Okay, and I might just move this manually and then use this to align the lefts. And maybe we'll do the same thing here. We'll align the lefts. Okay, so we can get some precision control over the layout of our forms by using the toolbar. So I would encourage you to play around with the toolbar, the layout toolbar, and try your hand at it and see if you can't make it do exactly what you want to do to get some precision control, some fidelity over how your controls are placed on your web form when absolutely positioned. And finally in this lesson, I want to talk about the concept of postback. And postback is really a mechanism that gives our end users the illusion that they're working with a much more robust application than what they are typically experiencing with web-based applications. It makes them feel like they're working with a Windows Forms application. There's much more interactivity. And we'll talk about how this is accomplished in lessons 3 and 4. So I don't want to get too deep into this, but you recall from the previous lesson how we were able to write code behind a button in order to change the text property of a label. And when we did that, we gave the user the illusion that merely by clicking the button that it changed the actual label to a different value, when in fact what happened behind the scenes was that ASP.NET stripped out the label, took the text that we wanted to place in it, rebuilt the web page, and sent it back to the user. Now there was a brief flicker on the web page because of the process of sending that information from the user's client browser all the way back to the web server recomposing the web page based on the input from the event handler, and then sending the web page back to the end user's client web browser. Now ideally that would happen so quickly that it would give the user the illusion of a very interactive, engaging interface to the application. So in this particular application, we might do something like this. We're going to change the success label .text property equal to success. So whenever they change or they add some information